Hello. This presentation is on copyright clarity, which is based on a book by Renee Hobbs, presented by Kelly Lawrence. First, let's talk about the fact that copyright affects the whole school community. We need to discuss administrators, teachers, students, and how copyright can affect each of those groups of the community. Administrators need to make it their job to educate the staff. They should have an intense knowledge of Section 107 for copyright laws. Users have the right to use copyrighted materials without payment or permission depending on the specific context and situation of the use. Just as Hobbs notes in her book, we need to figure out a way to get rid of the fear, to let educators know that they can use materials. The administrators should be conveying these laws and explaining them to their staff. Teachers need to educate and make themselves aware of what can be done in the classroom. They need to understand the difference between fair use, copyright, and public domain. Copyright is when an owner has a legal right to reproduce, display, transmit, perform, and modify a work, as well as the right to publicly perform a sound recording by digital transmission. Fair use is the part of copyright law that enables people to make legal use of copyrighted materials without payment or permission under some circumstances, especially in the classroom and for education purposes. Public domain is used when works are no longer copyrighted. This means that those items are available to everyone at any time. Teachers also need to educate themselves and their students on what the difference between attribution, plagiarism, and transformativeness is. Attribution is giving credit where it's due. This is things like making sure you do a correct reference page. Plagiarism is when you use someone else's work without attribution, when you cut and paste or copy and you don't put that in your reference material. Transformativeness is something that's very appropriate for teachers in the classroom. It's when you repurpose something and make it your own. Students today are exposed to so much sharing of material. It's hard for them to really understand when they're copying someone's work or when they're just adding to it. It's important that they educate themselves, and teachers educate, and administrators educate, so that everybody understands what plagiarism actually is and when they have to cite their work. Let's look at some different scenarios to consider when we're breaking the law and when we're not. A worksheet for multiplying fractions was found in a book I bought. Can all the 4th grade teachers copy and use it in class? No. As stated by Hobbs on page 57, although it's lawful to make copies for student use, it's not lawful to copy a large portion of the book of reproducibles and share it with lots of other teachers. The intention of the book was for a teacher to buy it and to make copies for their students. But once you make the copies for the other teachers, it's not the same purpose. They no longer have to purchase the book now, which is what makes it unlawful. Scenario 2. If I show a video in class from YouTube, am I violating copyright laws? No. You can show or link YouTube videos for classroom purposes and not worry about copyright laws. However, YouTube is not considered public domain. Be sure to read and understand YouTube's terms of service at this website. So, in education, what can we do? The Code of Best Practices and Fair Use for Media Literacy Education gives us guidelines. The first 3 principles apply to educators, or teachers. Educators can make copies of articles, TV shows, and other copyrighted works and use them for educational purposes. Educators can create curriculum materials that contain embedded copyrighted materials. And educators can share, sell, and distribute curriculum materials that contain embedded copyrighted material. The next 2 principles apply to learners, or students. Learners can use copyrighted works in creating new materials. Learners can distribute their works digitally if they meet the transformativeness standard. Transformativeness is a term used to describe the repurposing of copyrighted material as part of the creative process. Joyce Valenza is a school librarian media specialist at Springfield High School in Philadelphia. She writes about how transformativeness had shaken her world and replaced her conservative position on copyright. She says, if a student has repurposed and added value to copyrighted material, she should be able to use it beyond the classroom as well as within it. Our forefathers understood the importance of copyright. Section 1, Article 8 of the U.S. Constitution says, government can establish a copyright system to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. A big misconception is that copyright is supposed to be about money and profit and control. But that's not what the U.S. Constitution intended at all. The real purpose was about spreading knowledge and innovation. As the U.S. Constitution says, the purpose of copyright is to promote the spread of knowledge and innovation. So it seems that copyright has been about education all along. In conclusion, fair use is a guideline, copyright is a law. In education, there are a lot of guidelines that can help us to use copyrighted material. Make sure you pay attention to the law and make sure you follow the guidelines. Thank you.